Welcome to the Under 8 podcast, a 3 times per week college basketball show brought to you in under 8 minutes. That's time of recording. It is Tuesday, February 27th, 10:18 p.m. My name is Josh Mullenix. On today's pod, Reed Shepherd is that dude. Kansas does something it does not do very often, which is lose at home to an unranked opponent in Big 12 play, and an ACC matchup with bubble implications. It's all right now on the Under 8 podcast. Josh Doering here with me. Kentucky 91, Mississippi State 89. Josh, there's plenty to talk about, plenty of really impressive individual performances, but hard to start anywhere. Well, not as hard as you might think, but pretty hard to start anywhere else other than Reed Shepherd and his 32 points on 11 of 14 shooting.
I was going to say, there's another guy that's making an argument. Now,
yeah, but when one guy was 11 of 14 and the other guy's 11 of 24, I got to go with one guy over the other.
And when the other one hit the game winner so that his team won, that kind of helps too.
Yeah, that doesn't hurt.
Yeah. Reed Shepherd was unreal. And the other thing too is Reed Shepherd was making an impact on both ends of the floor. Same camp. Josh Hubbard, not quite so much on the defensive end. Now, he made shot after shot. He kept Mississippi State in this game when it looked like Kentucky might run away with it. He was, and I mentioned this before, when we talk about Mississippi State, he is quietly one of the best freshmen in the country that's not getting any attention. He's outstanding. But this was really about Reed Shepherd. I absolutely love his game. This was the epitome of it, right? Defensively, blocking shots, steals, passing, and of course, he shoots the lights out. He can score, getting to the basket. I mean, he had a bad moment, at least only one significant bad moment, which was the pass at the end that he threw for reasons nobody seems to understand. Probably him too, once he goes back and looks at it on film. But that was it. Other than that, it was practically flawless. It was, in a game where they get bullied inside, Rob Dillingham is nowhere to be found for a large portion of the game, and then he does kind of get going and helps kickstart this run to give Kentucky the lead. But yeah, this was Reed Shepherd, and then everybody else. He was incredible.
Yeah, it was another good game for Antonio Reeves. He was really good in Kentucky's win over Alabama over the weekend. And he's really been excellent for the last 4 or 5 games or so. His game log, the last 4 games looks like 22, 25, 24, and 21. And that's with wins over Auburn, Alabama, and Mississippi State in that stretch, and a road loss to LSU by 1. So I think Kentucky, however far they go, it's going to be based on their offense. And Antonio Reeves is him playing well, him scoring efficiently is a really big part of that. And he's been doing that at a pretty high clip the last couple weeks or so.
Can we address the big picture here for a second?
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, we had a conversation on the broadcast about how apparently people feel that this Kentucky team is last year's UConn, where they're going to put it all together at the end. Now, they're playing good basketball right now.
That's also not what happened to UConn. UConn put it all together at the beginning and then had this lull in the middle and then returned to what we had. Yeah.
Exactly. That is the difference.
I was unaware that Kentucky was considered pretty much hands down the best team in the country at one point earlier this season, which is basically where we got with UConn.
And had a number 1 to their name.
Yes. Not to mention that.
Yeah. That's where I went.
Did they early in the season? I'm not totally sure they ever did.
Okay, maybe they. I feel like at some point, because didn't Purdue lose?
Yeah, but like in the same week that UConn did. Or there was another team, or there was like a Kansas up there that actually was number 1 the week that Purdue lost. But Purdue didn't lose until after the New Year.
Right. Okay, maybe they were number 1. Maybe not. I don't.
Yeah, but for some reason, I remember looking and being surprised that UConn last year didn't get to number 1 in the country. early in the season. I'm going to look because I'm curious, but I'll let you know. Keep talking.
The point is the same. UConn was rolling and then lost that and regained it. There was nothing regained here. This is Kentucky getting better, which was going to happen with a younger team.
They didn't. They did not. They were second in the December 19th and December 26th polls.
Okay.
And then they lost right before the new year and dropped to 4 and then dropped all the way to 24 by the end of January, which is crazy. So ended up 10th in the final 8 people.
It's just Purdue's fault, really.
Pretty much.
So that's one. 2, that UConn team was much better defensively. Yes. Which is the other part of this. Kentucky was not good defensively in this game. Generally speaking, they were bad. Now, their offense was good enough and Reed Sheppard was good enough that they won. It does nothing to increase my confidence in this team in March. To me, this is becoming very simple about where I stand on this. They don't have good enough defense to win a national championship. However, if I'm a 1 seed and I see them in that 4-5 matchup, I am very disappointed because I want no part of these guys because their ceiling is incredibly high. On any given day, they can go, and Mississippi State's a very good defensive team. They scored 91 without even having a generally good game from their entire team.
56 in the second half.
Yeah.
56.
They can go beat anybody. It's not a question, and obviously they're one of the most talented teams in the country just from a pure physical and just evaluation, right, recruiting and all that. They're very, very talented. But to me, that's what they are. They can go take down anybody. But I cannot trust this team to do this for 6 straight games. And you've been pointing this out that we haven't seen it for 6 straight games this season. And this win doesn't change any of that for me.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm firmly planted into a camp with Kentucky that I will stay in until they win the national championship, and we'll be happy with being wrong. But I'm right there with you until they do it. I won't believe that anybody, not just Kentucky, but anybody can win a championship with that kind of defense.
Right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's not specific to them. It's just the formula to win a national championship is not a formula they have.
Right.
Bottom line.
Yeah. Big 12. Dude, Kansas winning by 6 inside their own building, Fog Allen. Winning by 6 against BYU. 7-7 in conference. 19-8 overall. And they get outscored by 14 in the final 20 minutes, 47-33 in that second frame. The Cougars get a big-time W for themselves. And here's Kansas doing something again. We can add it to the list of things that Kansas doesn't do. And that's, one, not lose inside Fog Allen. They won 17 in a row in that building. That was like the third longest.
I think it was 19.
Something like that. 17, yeah. 19. They had won 71 in a row at home when leading at halftime. Both of those streaks came to an end tonight against BYU. I mean, I feel like we've been playing the same drum with Kansas over and over and over again, that they desperately just need a little bit more offensively, it seems like always. And when their big 3 guys aren't scoring, and then you add the fact that there's no Kevin McCullough in this game, you're vulnerable. And I would say that's I guess this is surprising. It's less surprising than it would be in other years.
Definitely. For me. Yeah, for sure. That's the biggest part of this, is that, nobody carried the scoring load. Guys scored. The bench actually produced a little bit. But nobody took it upon themselves to compensate for the fact that you don't have Kevin McCullough. And then Hunter Dickinson went and missed a bunch of free throws in a row. KJ Adams just isn't that guy.
6 of 15 from the free throw line. 6 of 15.
Yeah. That's a problem. Johnny Furphy had a really bad shooting night. that's a problem. There was not anybody. And BYU's got their balanced attack. The bench was fantastic with Robinson and Traore. So the bigger part of this for me moving forward, because it's not too difficult to figure out why this happened or how it happened. Assuming that Kevin McCullough isn't coming back, and Bill Self said it's a week-to-week situation from what I read, so it's not like he's knocking on the door of he might play any game here. It almost sounds like he might just be shut down for at least the end of the regular season and maybe even until the NCAA tournament to hopefully get him healthy when it matters most. Assuming he's not there for a little bit. Who makes threes on this team if Johnny Furphy doesn't?
Nobody.
And I'm, of course, two different players.
Nick Timberlake was supposed to be the answer to that question.
And he missed, 2 threes in a row when they were down 6 at the end? Now, he did hit one. There were 2 that got made right after I made this. I was thinking about this and wrote this down in our rundown as one of the points I wanted to bring up. But before that, they went 3.
They went 3 of 15 from the 3-point line. I'm not sure that your point is moot.
No, definitely not. That's when you're trying to feed one of the best bigs in the country, and when your point guard needs to have some space to make things happen, and your other key scorer doesn't shoot, that's a problem. That's also why Kevin McCullough is so important. Not only defensively, not only because he's one of your best players, but because he spreads the floor. And so now you have him on one side and Furphy on the other, and it looks and feels completely different because you have to guard him differently. That was really the only big thing I had coming out of this game. We've talked about this over and over again. I also made a note that Mark Pope, you can't get teed up when your team is down 2 inside Fog Allen, but apparently you can. So I was wrong on that.
Yeah, I'm completely uninspired by Kansas. Completely uninspired. And, Kevin McCullough is healthy when comes Thursday after Selection Sunday, then I suppose with the top end talent that Bill Self has, that you can't totally write them off, but it hasn't passed the eye test for me.
No.
For most of the season. And I think, somehow they've managed, mostly because it's the Big 12, to stay inside the top 10 of the AP poll pretty much all season. But it hasn't communicated for me.
No. Good for BYU. That's a really important resume boosting win in terms of making sure you don't get yourself closer to the bubble, and in terms of being able to separate yourselves from some other teams once you get into the, we'll just say, 6 seed conversation, for example, right? When you're trying to figure out all the 6 seeds, the 7 seeds, if they finish the season really strong, maybe a 5 seed, depending on how things go. When you're trying to just, figure out and sort all these teams out that have very similar resumes, having something like that nobody else has is quite helpful. And they hadn't really, of course, they've got a lot of good wins because they're playing in the Big 12 and they're a good basketball team. But they haven't, nobody's got one like this in the Big 12. So that's a very, very important, very beneficial win, which probably didn't need to be said, but wanted to bring it up and put it in terms of bracketology anyway.
Quickly, last but not least, Clemson 69, Pitt 62, an important NCAA tournament game. It's an important game with NCAA tournament ramifications, and Clemson on the back of 4 different scores in their starting lineup, reaching double figures. And even on a night where PJ Hall is 3 of 10 from the field, they get enough from the supporting cast. The backcourt was really good, really efficient. Ian Shefflin, 15 and 12. They get enough to beat Jeff Capel and the Pitt Panthers.
It looked like for a little bit there that Pitt might actually do this. And that was why we picked this game. Just wanted to talk about is all of a sudden they're right there in that bubble conversation if they get this win. They had really started to get things going, and at least played themselves back into the conversation and given themselves an opportunity. Then they had this game, and you've got an early lead. Things are looking pretty good. Then Clemson scores 42 points in the second half, and then it's not particularly close at the end. And it did kind of, if you look at the balance of the game, it did look like it was always going to go this way once Clemson stopped turning the ball over. Because that's where Pitt had their big advantage, was that they took care of the ball and Clemson didn't, particularly in the first half. Because Clemson won the 3-point line, Clemson won the paint. They generally did the important things better outside of taking care of the basketball. And so over time, once they cleaned it up a little bit, got a little bit more efficient, you had all these guys contributing, started knocking down some threes. That was kind of that for Pitt. Valiant effort, though. I mean, they gave themselves an opportunity, and just didn't have enough at the end of the day. And it was Clemson's game pretty much for most of the second half once the tide started to turn.
Yep, 42-31, the edge in the second half. Important win for Clemson. You needed to not drop that one to Pitt at home this late in the season. Josh, anything else from the evening?
Should acknowledge what RJ Davis did.
Sure. I suppose the last 2 days, whatever you're feeling.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was the most points scored in that building, if I've got that correct. 42. He's been fantastic most of the season, and has not only has he not taken a step back without Caleb Love, but he has really, really, I feel like his season is validation of a addition by subtraction with Caleb Love, just because the pieces fit so much better, and he is having a great year, and obviously had a phenomenal game that North Carolina needed all those points to make sure they didn't lose that one.
Yeah, I think, unless something goes awry, Zach Edey is probably going to win National Player of the Year again. And he won National Player of the Year last year. And there's a list of players that we need to remember what they did the last couple seasons, because so much of it individually is going to be about Zach Edey and how dominant he was for 2 straight years. And as a result, how dominant Purdue was ultimately for 2 straight years. RJ Davis, we need to not forget about what RJ Davis did this year, because it's been some of the most spectacular basketball that has been played anywhere in the country this entire season. And, whether it's Trace Jackson Davis from last year, who played for an Indiana team that was ultimately a little disappointing, or, even if if RJ Davis and UNC have a semi-early exit in the NCAA tournament, he's been really, really special. And of course, 42 is a crazy number to put up, but these 2 years individually going to be about Zach Edey, but there are some performances throughout the duration of a season that need to be remembered alongside of it. And RJ Davis is definitely one of them.
Yep. Yeah. Usually that's probably enough to get you a natty poi. Unfortunately, he picked the wrong year to do this.
Yeah. Exactly. Anything else, Josh?
That's all I've got.
That's all I've got as well. Tuesday, February 27th. That'll do it for the Under 8 podcast. We'll be back on Thursday to discuss whatever happened over the next 48 hours. Set up what will be an important weekend in the sport for sure. Until then, thank you so much for being here. Be sure to subscribe to the Under 8 Pod on Twitter. Follow the Under 8 Pod on Twitter, subscribe on YouTube, and subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to your shows. Thank you so much for being here. We will see you on Thursday.